Hey guys, so I'm finally getting around to doing some videos. It's been a little while since I've done anything, mostly because I was moving to a home, I started a business, and just been extremely busy, had a kid. So I wanted to get around to putting together some more videos, and one of the main questions that I get is, how do I install that cam chain tensioner you did a review on? Or what is the process of setting tension? So there's a couple different ways to do this, and I wanted to go through how I do it and give you some pointers along the way of how some other people do it. There's a couple different ways that's what I would consider the right way of doing it. So what I've got here is I've got an 09 to 14 R1 motor that we've torn down a little bit to get some head work done and some cams made and thrown into a customer's bike. So I'm going to run through this real quick here on the floor and try to do as best I can to get the lighting right. I'm hoping the lighting in here is sufficient enough to be able to get you a good video. So what we're going to do is we're going to assume that this is a completely stock setup. Right now I actually have the cam chain tensioner in there and the timing cover pulled off the side of the motor. So we're going to assume this is a completely stock setup. The first step you're going to want to do is you're going to want to pull off this cover, and when you're doing that, you're going to want to be very careful because this timing guide pin likes to get stuck in the cover, and if that comes out, that whole guide will literally fall and you will lose all tension in the chain, and there's a really good chance that the chain will actually move on either the cam sprocket or on the crank sprocket or on the cam sprockets up top. So what you're going to want to do is pull that off and kind of take a look in through the side while you're doing it and make sure that's not moving out with it. If it is, grab it with a pair of needle nose pliers and pull the cover off and like push the pin in at the same time and you should be okay. Once that cover's off, this cam, this crank sprocket actually has marks on it. And I don't believe that I have this lined up where it needs to be because I was setting timing on the cams and shimming and everything. But there is a mark on it that has a K. You're going to want to make sure that mark is lined up on the case right about here. There's a little line marked into the side of the case. A good rule of thumb is there's a little step out underneath this bolt hole. If it's lined up with that, you should be good. That gets the motor set to top dead center, which is where you want to be, just in case anything were to hop timing. It makes it a lot easier to set everything back. Once that's done, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take a flathead screwdriver, and I'm going to pull this chain tight. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to see it kind of like this when it's in. You're going to want to take a flathead screwdriver and take it and put tension on that guide about like that. And then while you're doing that, you should be able to wedge it in there and it should hold decent tension. And then you're going to want to remove the OEM cam chain tensioner. Take out the two bolts up top and hold tension with this flathead so that when you're pulling the old one out, if you're not holding tension, the chain will loosen up and kind of drop. It won't be that dramatic, but it will drop a little bit. And in that dropping, you could lose timing. So once you have the old one out, you're still gonna want to hold some tension on this. You know, like I said, wedging it in there, especially if it's a long blade like this, it kind of gets kind of thick. That should be enough to keep tension on it. And then you're going to want to put the new one in. My suggestion is to back out that cam chain tensioner pretty far. Don't lock it down all the way back, but just back it out so that when you're putting it in, it's not real difficult to get these screws here in. Once you've got it in, you're going to want to set tension. So while the screwdriver is actually in there, what I do is I finger tighten this until I have tension and it stops. That to me is setting my initial tension. Then you can remove your screwdriver, and then what I normally do is after it's finger tight, I do another quarter turn onto it, and then I lock down this locking nut. That sets tension, and then it's just the reverse, putting the timing cover back on, and you're set. You're good to go. It's very, very, very important that you hold tension. I see it all the time. People saying that they went to install the cam chain tensioner and they didn't sit at a top dead center, and then they also didn't hold tension on the guide, and they lost timing. One really, really important thing is if that ever happens, do not start the bike. Do not manually crank it over. Just move. What you need to do is to pull the valve cover gasket and to double check timing in reference to the crank sprocket, and make sure the cam sprockets line up where they need to. Otherwise, what you would have happen is what we call P to V. They would hit, which is the piston to valve actually touching. That's a really good way to ruin the head, ruin a piston, ruin a valve. I mean, it's really, really, really expensive. The last thing you want to do, the last thing I ever want to see is somebody hop online and post a video saying on Facebook saying, what's wrong with my bike? And they're starting it, revving the shit out of it, and you hear clink, 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 and it's just a nightmare. You're like, turn it off, stop. So if that ever happens, just stop what you're doing. You're going to have to pull the valve cover. You're going to want to double check and make sure that your timing is correct. Otherwise, you're talking thousands of dollars in repairs, and that's no fun, because this is actually supposed to help prevent any type of repair that may need to happen, because the OEM tensioner is pretty much known for losing tension. I believe there was a recall on it at one point, and this is just pretty much a safe bet. Those will not fail as long as you take care of them, as long as you're double checking tension every once in a while. I check mine personally about once a season. You know, when it comes wintertime and I do the wintertime maintenance, I'm in there, I'm double checking the tension, make sure everything's good to go, and then I lock this lock nut down pretty tightly just to make sure that the adjustment rod does not back out for any reason, because that's what it would do. It would back out. It would literally not go in. So that's pretty much the process of installing and setting tension. Now, what I've seen some other people do is they will fully tighten down this cam chain tensioner until it's completely tight, and then back it off one half turn, 180 degrees. That's another way you can do it. I've also seen some other videos, and I would never recommend doing it this way, is guys installing it and then turning on the bike and adjusting it until they would leave it a little bit loose and then adjusting it by noise. My only fear with that is if you back it out too far, you have a really good chance of this chain hopping a tooth and messing up timing. That's fine if that were to happen when the motor's not running, but you're running the motor and you're running into a really good chance of that timing hopping enough where you have a piston to valve, a collision, and then you're talking about a really costly repair. So that's my quick tip. I'm trying to keep this video under 10 minutes of how to set the tension and install a manual cam chain tensioner. This is pretty much applicable for most Yamaha bikes. Any bike that you can really get to the tensioner and to the timing cover and to hold tension onto that cam guide is pretty much a safe bet. I would really recommend doing that. The only guide that you really need to keep tension on is the exhaust side, because that's where most of your slack is going to be, because that's where the tensioner is actually pushing in on the guide. So that's where you need to keep your tension. If you have any questions, let me know. I will try to be as clear as possible, but hopefully that helps some people out and eliminates some of the questions that I get. If you are in need of a manual cam chain tensioner, feel free to get a hold of me. I actually have a business now where that I sell motorcycle, actually in particular sport bike parts, hard parts, and accessories and different things like that. This is actually a Graves cam chain tensioner. We actually sell a lot of these. So any questions, feel free, send me a message, let me know, and I will be sure to help you out as quickly as I can. Thanks, guys.